Hello and welcome to another video by Rick Miracle Me. In my series Freemasonry and Satanism, a continuation of the Philadelphia Experiment book, The Philadelphia Experiment Murder. Alexandra Bruce, edited by Peter Moon. The ship, the Philadelphia, in the Philadelphia Experiment, the USS Eldridge, apparently had been used as a experiment, hoping to camouflage the ship from the enemy's radar and sight by installing electronic radio transmitters, certain frequencies around the ship. But it had an unexpected turn of results. The ship disappeared and apparently traveled in time and went into another dimension. And apparently, in other books and material I'm going to go over in the future, there's much evidence to support this. Reality is not what most people know. So anyways, we're continuing on here, page 43. Chapter 3, called The Truth. And as you see, I just highlight some portions. So I'll try to just cruise right through this and see where it takes us. So Cynthia attributes, it's Phil Schneider's ex-wife, and Phil Schneider was the son of Oscar Schneider, who was the doctor in the military dealing with the Philadelphia Experiment. Phil, his son, was a geologist by trade and involved with the government in building underground facilities all over the world. Even communicating with aliens, so it says. And apparently in my research we're focusing on two types of aliens. The gray aliens, even like the one that Aleister Crowley, the evilest man alive, who was talking to Hiawas, who said he was the god of war and vengeance. And this seems to be a lot. The grays are commonly known to UFO buffs and researchers. And abduction, like the movie E.T. And also building underground caverns for the government. There was also Phil Schneider. I had a brain thing here, thinking for a minute. I got a turkey walking up to me on my right-hand side. Let's see if we can see him. There he is. I was a little distracted. So anyways, apparently, Phil Schneider also interfaced with the reptilians, which a lot of people in the research world, like David Icke, call shapeshifters. They can look like you or me. They can look like they could be presidents, queens. Some say they are. Even that video I keep talking about it with Arizona Wilder and David Icke, I-C-K-E. Go watch that video. She claims to have seen a lot and describes it. And who? I think including Zachariah Stitchens. Uncloaking, being a reptilian, viciously attacking a child or a sacrificed person to drink the blood and eat the flesh. If this is all true, we're dealing with some pretty gruesome stuff. I read books and study and report. I guess until I see it with my own eyes, might even be hard-pressed for me to believe it. But I have seen what I believe were UFOs, orange orbs. And I've had some of my own out-of-body experiences and psychic experiences numerous times. And I've read hundreds of books, and so I am convinced that we are spiritual beings in these biological bodies, and I accept the fact that there was a reality or a higher advanced society prior to this one after the Great Flood. The monuments are on Earth, no doubt. But the interpretation of those monuments and some of the other data may be misleading for a very insane, insidious agenda. The New World Order and New Age. All the symbolism is there. So anyway, Cynthia attributes his disjointed behavior to brainwashing he underwent following his high security employment. So that would be Phil Schneider, who was the geologist working with the government, building underground facilities and interfacing with aliens, whose father was Oscar Schneider, who was involved with the Philadelphia experiment that we had gone over in the last video, part 1 of number 76, the Philadelphia experiment murder. Was Phil Schneider a troubled crank who fulfilled his paranoid hallucinations of being stalked by the secret government by taking his own life? Or was he in fact murdered by agents of the government because he had violated his national security oath and because his seemingly wild claims contained classified information? The man who worked with the government building the underground cities, facilities all over the world. He even had a battle with aliens. Supposedly got shot with an alien phaser gun or something, laser gun. Moving on, as Phil apparently incomprehensible conduct can be more properly understood with an understanding of the technology of heavy-duty mind control. And I am convinced mind control right now is rampant. This morning, I got a phone call from a friend of mine and said, did you see what's going on in the sky right now? This is December 11th, 2015, and I'm in the mountains of North Carolina. And I had pointed out sky spraying to him a week earlier while we were having lunch. And he accepts it, he can see it. So anyways, this morning I went outside and looked up, and the whole sky was a complete lattice. Lines from north to south, and lines from east to west, crisscrossing like a gigantic checkerboard. Unbelievable. And not continuous lines. Some of them were helter-skelter in the lattice. They were painting the sky with these chemicals. I can't see how it can be good for we humans. Something's up. More and more cases of brainwashing or debriefing are beginning to emerge in conjunction with the UFO episodes involving the military. And again, go watch the Arizona Wilder David Icke video interview and many others. The Bases series with Miles Johnston I keep talking about. And other books that I've read and will read in the future. So apparently a prime example of this, of the brainwashing debriefing, occurred with witnesses of the 1981 Brentwater Air Force Base case in England. This is a joint British-US base where a UFO is said to have landed in front of several servicemen. Some of the American soldiers reported that they were taken to a section of the base underground where they were drugged, hypnotized after witnessing UFOs land on the base. So if this UFO stuff is real, these grays and these aliens, why is the government covering it up? And another interesting question, is the government working in cahoots with these entities with an agenda for this new age and new world order? Number 3 question, are these creatures the demonic monsters mentioned in the Bible in Genesis? Look at the Egyptian hieroglyphics with some of the beings standing next to other beings 2 or 3 times as tall, like giants, and giants are mentioned in the Bible. Stephen Quayle wrote a book, Giants. There's all kinds of pictures and skeletons. Many episodes of giants being discovered on people's property. Let's say they're digging a septic tank or a cellar for a new house. And the Smithsonian swoops in, guys in black suits, take the skeleton, threaten everybody to shut up or national security or go to prison, fined, or killed. There's many examples. I've been going over these in my videos. And as the biggest question I have is, what the heck is going on all over the world? One guy from Egypt made a comment on my last video. He said, why are they over here and after our pyramids? And I commented back to him, I go, they're looking for something. Some kind of knowledge or information, and they want to rule the world. They want to bring back a golden age. The elite pharaohs and kings and all that stuff. And no middle class, slave class, and elite class. Just like the movie Hunger Games. If you haven't seen it, go rent it. You'll get the idea. You won't like it. Moving on. Their superiors dressed up with rubber alien masks acted out a bizarre scenario that would never make sense if they tried to explain it to anybody. So these soldiers saw the UFO. They were taken below in some underground facility, drugged, and their superiors dressed up in rubber alien masks, I guess to mess with their heads. The unwitting soldiers were used as guinea pigs in a test of what they could be made to believe they had seen and heard, because the actual truth about what happened to them was considered so crucial to security that it was absolutely that could not come out. So that's how they were messing with these guys' heads who saw the craft and the UFOs. If it is true that Phil Schneider worked on black budget underground projects for 17 years, at taxpayer expense I might mention, it is likely that he was brainwashed on several occasions. This in turn would indicate at least part of the time he was unknowingly spewing disinformation programming. Fair enough. Self-mutilation is a common symptom of people suffering from dissociative identity disorder known as multiple personality disorder. Dissociative identity disorder is the typical human response to extreme ongoing trauma. The ego personality splits off, creates alternate personalities in order to contain and isolate the profoundly traumatic memories from the base personality. DID, dissociative identity disorder, is the condition that is systematically induced in the subjects of most savage form of brainwashing, trauma-based mind control. Just FYI, it's real. Plenty of books on it, plenty of videos on it, plenty of websites on it. MK Ultra, Project Montauk, Project Paperclip, Phoenix Project, many others. Since employees of high security operations are routinely debriefed as a matter of security, a discussion of Phil Schneider, underground bases, and or aliens is grievously incomplete without a word about mind control. Research on mind control spanning several decades has been conducted by the CIA, it's in this book, and U.S. military, and is a matter of public record, as shown by many documents obtained through the Freedom of Information Act. These documents, some of which are posted all over the internet. Paragraph on the bottom, where it says it. Push pause. Read it and believe it. So all over the internet show the official start of mind control. Project MK Ultra, ULTRA, to have been in 1953. Additionally, official documentation is available on similar projects as early as the mid-1940s. And one has to wonder why they're sky spraying us like crazy today with a mission in mind. Something. It was intense. And then the Gwen towers, fake cell phone towers, even installed in secret places on roofs and in church temples so you can't see them. Gwen towers called ground wave, and then the many HARP systems. And knowing that radiated radio waves caused the USS Eldridge, the Philadelphia experiment, the ship to disappear, with all those Gwen towers and HARP systems and sky-spraying heavy metals, are they trying to make a gigantic, just me thinking, rationalizing, time machine for the whole planet? Crazy, you think? There are many well-researched books and monographs on Project MK Ultra. And it's 140 or more projects in print on the internet by several authors. So there's many authors investigating this. Remember, I do book reviews. I investigate the authors. I investigate the investigators. I felt somebody should do this so that save a lot of people a lot of time, like a synopsis of what this stuff is all about. A lot of researchers out there and websites that are very good. I recommend them. InfoWars, Steve Quayle. There's just many of them. And don't believe anything. Even Dane Wigington, geoengineeringwatch.org on the sky spraying. There's monitoring sites for HARP transmissions, monitoring sites for earthquakes, monitoring sites so you can look at the sun, monitoring sites for this space. And a lot of people are monitoring all this stuff and reporting every day. Lisa Haven. So, you know, you have to just be open-minded, take some notes, and use your rational brain and figure it out. Find out why they're attacking and destroying a lot of the property and murdering and displacing all the people in the Middle East. Why they did the overthrow of the government in the Ukraine. Why they did Jade Helmets dispersing troops and equipment all over the USA. Why they're doing more software technologies to monitor everything you and I do and predetermine if we're a threat. And then maybe they just push a button and a drone is sent to someone's house. Or some other method of neutralizing them, which means killing them. Several other notable works include those of Jonathan Marks, Alexander Constantine, Colin Ross, Catherine Wilson, Martin Cannon, and you know I will look these up, and the latter persuasively arguing that alien abductions are actually screen memories relating to secret mind control experiments that have nothing to do with the actual aliens whatsoever. A lot of misinformation, I guess, the government is doing. But there is no doubt about Agenda 21 and sustainability and their threats of global warming, global cooling, climate change in order to bring about a new one world order, one world currency, and one world religion, and eliminating the middle class. Can you imagine, even in that book on biodiversity I ordered, I should have it in a day or two, they plan on fencing off 50% of the property in the U.S. where humans are banned, they can't go there. And I thought to myself, will they stop there? Once they force everybody off of all the forest or other lands, mountains, waterways, will they stop there? And of course, if they take half of what you got, they're never going to be happy. They're going to want more of what you got, and more of what you got, until you got nothing. That's the plan. There is nothing new about mind control. It is as old as the human race and its drive for control. The manifold aspects of mind control, information control, and their degrees of intensity are as varied as consciousness itself. They range from advertising to spin control, to the darkest and most depraved manipulations of the human mind imaginable. Remember, that base in Cuba, Guantanamo, waterboarding, and much more. Humiliating those people, and much more. For what reason? They have drugs. They could have got what they want the regular way. There was probably some kind of thing mentally there to scare tactics and fear tactics to we the people. Extensive knowledge about the nature of the mind and the means of controlling it has been accumulated by certain secret societies over a millennium. Yeah, these would be the secret mystery schools of Babylon, witchcraft, Freemasons, Zionists, Jesuits, Druids, and much more. No matter how benevolent or spiritual, I was watching a video today about the Druids, that they want to make it. Commandment number 1 in the Bible: there is only one God. And all these other religions, spiritual, New Age, talk about Mother Earth, the goddess. The initiative cults of the ancient world made powerful observations about the effects of ritual and near-death experience on the human psyche. The assassin cults of the Near East embellished upon these effects with the use of drugs and hypnosis. These techniques were acquired by the Templars, who brought the knowledge back to Europe during the Crusades. They understand how to create and manipulate mass hysteria. And with the TV and these terrorists and shootings, they know exactly what they're doing. They have an agenda. And if you want to find out what it is, you're not going to like it. This body of esoteric information was honed by the Catholic Church, especially during the Inquisition, when the mind-shattering effects of physical torture were explored. All of the above was improved upon by the Nazis and the CIA in the latter half of the 20th century. In the process of trauma-based mind control, a person is completely broken down psychologically. After that, he is then built back up to the specifications of the controller. It is recounted that hundreds, if not thousands, of personality fragments can be systematically created in a human being, with each personality or file, just like a file on your computer, programmable with information and skills that can be triggered by various means, and of which the base personality is blissfully unaware. So I'm saying, some of these shootings, the guy going into the church with the black people, San Bernardino, Sandy Hook, Boston bombing, Batman shooting, etc., etc., etc. Could they be using these technologies? Could they be testing these technologies? Different combinations of drugs, hypnosis, and stimulo receiver, brain implants, Arizona Wilder, David Icke, go watch the video, and others, the Basis series, Miles Johnston, and others, look it up on the internet. Electromagnetic and optotonic brainwave entrainment devices are also reportedly used to control an individual's thoughts and actions. And now you know why they want to microwave everybody, microchip everybody. They're already microwaving people with the HARP systems, and maybe with the Gwen things, and cell phones, and other satellite technologies. The worker agent can thereby be allowed to roam freely in the world without compromising the security of an operation. These are the protocols that are rumored to be among those to create ultimate warriors. And make no doubt about it, that's what they want. Such as Navy SEALs and other special forces, operatives, and combatants. The creation of such subjects is reported to be an aspect of the Monarch Project. That's Monarch, like the monarch butterfly. A sub-project of the MK Ultra. So look up Monarch Project on YouTube. Watch a couple videos. Need a little notepad to take notes on this stuff. When you get done after a couple months, you'll probably have a book. Maybe you can go on a lecture tour and start telling people. The following is an excerpt from an article entitled Project Monarch, Nazi Mind Control by Ron Patton and published in the fall 1996 issue of Paranoia magazine. Doing my video outside again because of something very unusual, and everybody's talking about it. But this is December 11th, Friday, 2015. And it's warm out. Doesn't bother me. If this is global warming, bring it on. Maybe we could all live in Russia and Canada, which is half the dry land of the planet. Wow, wouldn't that be a windfall? Anyways, the most incriminating statement to date made by the government official as to the possible existence of Project Monarch was extracted by Anton Katkin, a writer for the publication The New Federalist, when former CIA Director William Colby was asked directly, "What about Monarch?" He replied angrily and ambiguously, "We stopped that between the late 1960s and the early 1970s. And if people believe that, I've got some nice buildable swampland lots in Florida in the Everglades you can buy. Just drain the swamp and build a home. Don't worry about it. You believe me?" Of course you don't believe me. So you're going to believe the government stopped these programs? Why since then did they build all those HARP transmitters and now Gwen towers, fake cell phone towers? And with Jade Helm with all that software that can predetermine what you're going to do or a whole community of people. Why? It is interesting to note that Colby was eventually found dead, floating in the Chesapeake Bay under mysterious circumstances. So the CIA Director William Colby said, "We stopped that in the late 60s and early 70s. Which reminds me, Prime Minister Sharon of Israel, in a heated argument in his Congress, they were going to take over some more of the Palestinians' land. And he burst out, and you can look this up on the internet. Everything I tell you, do not believe me, look it up. Print it out. But he said, don't worry about the USA. We control the USA. This would be Zionist Israel. And he was in a coma days later. So they shut up people who make mistakes. Moving on. Wherein a certain percentage of their clients had undergone mind control programming in an intensively systematic manner, Hammond alluded to the Nazi connection, military and CIA mind control research, Greek letter and color programming, and specifically mentioned the Monarch program. Just reading my highlighted portions. In relation to a form of operative conditioning. Alpha, regarded as general and regular programming, so they got 4 stages of this: alpha, beta, delta, theta. So alpha is regarded as general regular programming within the base control personality, characterized by extremely pronounced memory retention, along with substantially increased physical strength and visual acuity. Alpha programming is accomplished through deliberately subdividing the victim's personality. Alpha programming is accomplished through deliberately subdividing a victim's personality, which in essence causes a left brain, right brain division, allowing for a programmed union of L and R through neuron pathway stimulation. Got it? Beta, referred to as sexual programming. This programming eliminates all learned moral convictions and stimulates the primitive sexual instinct devoid of inhibitions. There won't be inhibitions. And that's what the New Age is they want to bring people back to the primitive sexual instinct devoid of inhibitions. That's Satanism. Aleister Crowley's do as thou wilt. So when we talk about a lot of these sexual satanic rituals, there's a purpose. Delta. This is known as killer programming, originally developed for training special agents or elite soldiers, i.e. Delta Force, 1st Earth Battalion, Mossad, etc. That would be Israel Mossads. In covert operations, optimal adrenal output and controlled aggression is evident. Subjects are devoid of fear, very systematic in carrying out their assignments. Self-destruct or suicide instructions are laid in at this level. So how many of these people have been perpetrators lately who wind up dead during the event? Just saying. Theta, considered to be the psychic programming. Bloodliners, those coming from the multi-generational satanic families. There are satanic families. One of them is the Illuminati. There's names in there from everything from Rockefeller, Rothschild, Kennedy, DuPont, etc., etc., etc. I'm going to go over that book and show some more names. Some you'll be surprised at. It's on your kid's cereal box. Little hint there. We're determined to exhibit a greater propensity for having telepathic abilities than did non-bloodliners. That's why they intermarry. And to keep up these psychic abilities. Due to its evident limitations, however, various forms of electronic mind control systems were developed and introduced, namely biomedical telemetry devices, brain implants, directed energy lasers using microwaves, and or electromagnetism. It is reported these are used in, page 50 here, conjunction with highly advanced computers and sophisticated satellite tracking systems. Then we got two more. Omega, a self-destruct form of programming, also known as code green. The corresponding behaviors include suicidal tendencies and self-mutilation. This program is generally activated when the victim survivor begins therapy or interrogation and too much memory is being recovered. Wow, they have a self-destruct program. Gamma, another form of system protection through the deception programming which elicits misinformation and misdirection. This level is intertwined with demonology, and tends to regenerate itself at a later time if inappropriately deactivated. Oh my. Some of the most sophisticated mind control protocols involving the embedded of disinformation programming, layer upon layer of false cover stories in the subject's memories. When subjects begin to break their programming by delving into their past involvement in high security posts or experiments, bizarre memories often come to the surface. Moving on, likewise, the hapless investigator gets stuck in a quagmire surrounded by a hall of mirrors. It is very devilish. For example, Phil's stories about working side by side with big-nosed greys, aliens, can be taken at face value by the credulous or taken to be programmed by screen memories by the more suspicious. The whole thing by pronouncing all of the above to be insane. So the skeptical walk away thinking everything is just insane. Anybody you try to talk to about this will look at you and think you're nuts. We're reading books. We're doing book reviews. It's not necessarily what we believe, but we want to inquire what's being said. So we can use our own God-given brains to figure this out. The hardcore conspiratologists surmising Phil suffered from induced insanity in the form of dissociative identity disorder via high-tech mind control, agrees to an extent with the skeptic. Something for everyone, folks. It's a keep 'em guessing game, and it works. As per Alexandra Bruce, edited by Peter Moon. Moving on. On the street, he bumped into a WW2, World War II RAF pilot. This would have been Phil. When Peter asked him, so Peter Moon was walking on the street, researching for this book material in a book, and he ran into a World War II RAF pilot, and he asked him if he knew anything about the great rocket scientists. The old-timer motioned to a nearby building and said, "Guess I'm getting tired of speaking. Everything you want to know about went on in that building," and he pointed towards the building. When Peter asked him what he meant, the Englishman very eerily replied, "Implants, implants, aviation implants." So they were seriously into this. Again, Arizona Wilder, David Icke interview, Miles Johnson on the Basis series. He's got many different interviews with many different people fessing up to this information. Brain implants are not the stuff of science fiction. And if you go check it out on the internet, microchipping children in California and Texas, you'll see that they are doing it. And parents whose children are not microchipped are denied access to the library, cafeteria, etc. I was discussing this with a friend in Florida, a girlfriend of mine and her sister. And her sister said, "What's the big deal? My husband down at the VFW, his group are always having Saturdays where they invite parents to bring their children in to be microchipped." It's underway. You can look it up. I've done it. There's millions of results on the internet. I've shown them in my previous videos. Even if only a small fraction of the above described mind control scenarios are true, it is a horrendous proposition. Such is the resilience of the human life force, however, that many people who report having been thusly manipulated have managed to derive positive and empowering insights about their own lives and about consciousness itself. Others have not been so lucky. One can readily assume that there are underground bases in existence to provide secure locations for the development of the latest defense technologies to serve as housing for the ruling elite in a worst-case scenario, such as a nuclear holocaust. Even if there are no such thing as a joint military big-nosed gray alien base, these facilities are of very highest security. It would therefore stand to reason that maintaining the invulnerability of such immensely secret installations will require that the personnel submit to certain protocols beyond the taking of a secret oath. The deployment of any or all of the latest technologies, breakthroughs in hypnotists, pharmaceuticals, electronics, and good old trauma to guarantee the successful encryption of a person's high security memories is understandable from the point of view of the interest of national security. So the government has many goings-on, secret projects, underground bases, and everything else. So the people involved, because of so many leaks out there, we're all aware of it. We are all aware of it. Need some water. So they have procedures. I do not know what the actual statistics are on the productivity of the Nazis and Soviet forced labor camps, but I would be willing to bet that the output ratio of any fine U.S. defense contractor today is more efficient, although they are notorious for being just the opposite. Because we get a lot of false information fed to we the people. The This principle works well on paper and in the field until there is an unexpected break in the programming. And an illustrated example of a case of this is Duncan Cameron, the famed time traveler of the Montauk series. So apparently at Montauk Base at the end of Long Island, they had actually built some kind of time machine. And Duncan Cameron had traveled in time. Go on the YouTube and see for yourself what he says. True or not, that's not the point. We should educate ourselves about what's being said and use our God-given brains to figure it out. What emerged in his deprogramming process was that he had been drafted by the NSA after his tour of duty in Vietnam to be used in what was probably the most high-security series of operations in history, the Montauk Project. Remember, there is ample documentation that their father, Oscar Schneider, was involved in some extremely high-security projects during his 30 years as a Navy officer. In this line of reckoning, it becomes more plausible that there was some truth in what Phil Schneider had to say and the discrepancies in his stories, and finally begin to make some sense. Crazy stuff. In a crazy world. In a warm day, December 11th, here in the mountains of North Carolina, crazily warm. And the sky spraying today was insane. A lot of people know something's up. And I think it would just behoove the rest of us to pay attention to some of this stuff I'm talking about. And when we look at other books and magazines and material, and we keep coming across these mind control programs and other high-tech sciences, we begin to put pieces of the puzzle together. So that's what I'm attempting to do with these videos, to find out the truth. Well, it's time for a little sidebar information. One thing is, today, which is a day later since I made the first part of this video, today is December 13th, and apparently the group meeting over there in France passed some legislation or laws or some treaty or agreements, whatever, on global warming, which doesn't exist. Remember, they then switched to climate change, and at some points they were saying it was global cooling. It's all an agenda for the New World Order and for them to increase police powers. This is why apparently we had the Paris terrorist situation, San Bernardino and other things. One, as distractions. Two, to increase fear and control public opinion. And three, even Obama said the global warming thing, a few pundits have been saying this, politicians, is what's causing the terrorism in the world, if you can believe that. Just a big FYI, that was in the press release I noticed a few minutes ago. So they were posturing for that. Bad news for the rest of us. Guess good news for the elitist who want to eliminate the middle class, and the biodiversity people who, from the United Nations, want to fence off more than 50% of the United States, making it illegal for humans to go into those lands, and then there'll be a barrier zone. I did order that book, and I'll be showing it in my series of videos soon. And so they want a slave class. And I was thinking, like over there in Palestine, when Israel started out with a small portion of land, and the Pals had the rest of the land. Now the Palestinians have a short piece of land, a little piece. And the Israelis have all the land. And now they're attacking all of the Middle East, and the Israelis will have all of that land. And if they fence off 50% of the land in the United States, will they stop there? I think not. If history is any indication of the future, heck no, they'll never stop. So how are you going to control all these people? What kind of weapons will you have? What kind of weapons does the government have now? We're doing this Peter Moon marathon and some of the books that he was involved in writing or editing or authoring with other people. So I thought I'd take a little peek through my collection of Nexus magazines. Which are apparently, from the way that I understand it, banned from being sold in the United States now because of the mind control and other articles in these issues of Nexus magazine. So I thought I would just go through mine and see if there were a few things in there that ought to be a concern to the rest of us. And yes, I did find some seriously interesting articles. One is Death Rays, a Hidden Technology. Right where my finger is there. Oh my, you're not going to believe this. A couple pages of stuff here. So here we go. Crazy. Death ray machine is invented by Cleveland scientists. Reported to have tremendous military possibilities. A successful death ray machine is said to have been invented after lengthy experiments by a Cleveland scientist. Privileged witnesses to demonstrations of the machine declared that experiments were successful to a startling degree. Dogs, cats, rabbits were killed instantly, their blood turning to water as the ray was turned upon them. It is reported that the machine has been suppressed by the government until such time it may be needed as a defensive weapon. So I suppose if the riotous people were to be swarming the Capitol building, they might have some interesting weapons. And why would the people be riotous? Maybe they were being suppressed, starved, their wealth, their health, all taken away, their freedom. Obama said that in a speech the other day, some variation of that, that he knew that as the economic conditions or weather, global warming, whatever he said, as these things increased, I went over this in a previous video, that the people's reaction and propensity to get more dangerous to the government would increase. And people reacting upon each other. Increased agitation, anger, etc. I got to print that out and read it in its entirety. This seems kind of important to understand this here. That was in 1934, by the way, at Cleveland scientists. Instantly killing dogs, cats, and rabbits, so I suppose it would have no problem with people. German death ray pistol stuns animals at a mile range. An odd-looking pistol firing magnesium charge, said to be capable of stunning men and animals a mile away, is now being demonstrated in Paris. Its inventor, a German who was forced to flee from his native land, hopes to sell the idea to the French government. Scientists believe the operation of the device is based upon the thermite reaction, now used in certain welding operations. The reflector mounted on the barrel of the gun would concentrate the deadly heat rays and protect the operator from the dazzling glare of exploding magnesium. Here's a picture. $1935. You know they've got to improved on all this stuff since then. Inventor hides secret of death ray. Pigeons on the wing, flying, instantly killed by death rays from a machine 4 miles away. That is the feat reputed accomplished by a deadly apparatus developed by Dr. Antonio Longora of Cleveland, Ohio, who recently announced that he had deliberately destroyed the lethal machine for the good of humanity. Meanwhile, we're all aware of the HAARP system, H-A-A-R-P, and Gwen Towers, ground wave, systems being installed all over the world. And the Gwen wave towers, fake cell phone towers, are supposed to be every 100 or 200 miles apart. The Cleveland inventor declared that he had stumbled on the deadly rays while experimenting in the treatment of cancer with high-frequency radiations. The action of the fatal rays, he declared, is painless, and they work by changing the blood into a useless substance, much as light transforms silver salts in the photographic process. Before a group of scientists, it is reported he once demonstrated that the radiations will kill rats, mice, and rabbits even when the animals were encased in a thick-walled metal chamber. Oh my. The rays, Dr. Laragaro believes, could kill human beings just as easily. That was in 1940. All right, moving on. Got another one here. Death ray may outlaw war. A death ray machine is on exhibition at a California Pacific International Exposition being held at San Diego, California. It was invented by Professor Harry May of London, England. Professor May feels that his new lethal weapon may be instrumental in outlawing war. Well, it's not going to do a lot of good now, because it appears to me it's the governments of the world against the peoples of the world. Instead of a French Revolution or Russian Revolution or Chinese Revolution or German Revolution or an American Revolution or any kind of revolution, they want a worldwide revolution. And then microchip all the people. Who they allow to live. He thinks that the nations, knowing that such a weapon for quick destruction is available, will hesitate to attack each other. Bet they're just waiting to use these on the populations. I mean, they are sky spraying us with unknowns. They don't tell us what they're dumping up there. A lot of people are now figuring out the moon landings were a fraud. You couldn't penetrate the Van Allen belt if you wanted to. They can't do it now. Space shuttle and all that couldn't do it. They can't go up past 400 miles. They only go up about 200 miles. They go past 400 miles, they will be cooked. And the equipment now is obviously, the technology is better than when they had the Apollo craft. And apparently there's a video out about the movie producer who created 2001 and some other movies, confessing that he was assisted or worked for the government to make the fake moon landing pictures, videos. True or false? And I happened to wake up last night. I couldn't sleep. And so when I wake up at 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning, I turn on the radio to Coast to Coast. And that's exactly what they were talking about. So it seems to be a foregone conclusion. They did not go to the moon. It was all a fraud. Again, like the terrorist situations now, it was all meant for public consumption, to sway the public, deceive the public. Meanwhile, you got all these death rays. We got another one here. A death ray which proved effectiveness before a San Francisco jury has been developed by Henry Fleur, Pacific Coast inventor. The apparatus, which employs a light beam impregnated with an infrared rays, successfully killed a snake in 8.5 minutes. A lizard was put to death in less than 6 minutes, with only 30 seconds required to kill a certain termites. So if they turn on these Gwen towers they're building everywhere, even in church steeples and other hidden places, so you don't recognize them, and the HARP systems, they could turn these things on for, say, 10 minutes over a city. In my opinion, and I do have an electrical engineering technician degree from UEI, United Electronic Institute, worked at a major aerospace company for 10 years. So I know a little bit about electronics. I remember when I was working at an aerospace company, when you walked out into one of the fields where they were experimenting with microwave dishes, it said with a gigantic sign, "Do not walk in front of this dish. It's highly dangerous." So some general probably looked at that and said, "Wait a minute, if it's dangerous, it's a weapon." That's how these people think. Mounted on an adjustable tripod, the ray can be aimed at objects in the same manner as a searchlight. The beam transmits a stream of high-frequency vibrations. 1936. Here's a picture of it. You think they've improved on it since then? They got technologies now I've seen in weapons magazines. They got lasers on planes or even ships, and they can take down a plane with lasers. And apparently, Linda Hunt, was it? I'll have to go back and... Judy Woods, sorry. Linda Hunt was another author I've been reading. Judy Woods was the one who wrote the book about 911, that she seemed to think high-energy particle beam weapons helped those towers come down. Most of us think they had demolition explosives installed. Professors have found thermite in the debris. All right, moving on. Ray of death kills at 6 miles. Latest of death rays designed for modern warfare comes from the Bourges, France. Henry Claudel, well-known French scientist, is the inventor. Recent experiments with the delicate apparatus have proved it to be unusually deadly when directed at small forms of life. The inventor estimates that the machine, which he calls rays of death, will kill any living thing in a distance of 10 kilometers to approximately 6.25 miles. The rays are projected by means of a slender tube mounted on a tripod, permitting the operator to send them in any direction or at any angle. Details regarding the construction of the death ray machine are being kept a closely guarded secret. You think? Only the results of the experiment having been made public. 1935. Henry Claudel. Here's a picture of the guy. So what do they have today? Might be a good question. Before the government stirs up the pot and creates a little fever amongst the people, so they riot down the street only to have the government waiting. Maybe evil reptilian characters, people into the occult and Satanism, waiting to turn on the switch to turn the death ray onto the people. Just saying. This biodiversity and fencing off 50% of America doesn't seem like a good idea. Sky spraying all those chemicals doesn't seem like a good idea. Passing that global warming legislation today, is definitely not a good idea. There is no global warming. Even the government admits that. Even the Secretary of the United Nations says it was all about to bring about a one world order. A report from Iron Mountain we went in there says back in 1973, or was it 67, that they needed realistic ideas like pollution and weather and environmental dangers to convince the public to go along and follow the government's control. Words like that. All right, kills at 200 miles. Famous scientist startling claims. A mystery wall of power. This can only be Nikola Tesla. Edison's greatest rival, the man who perfected alternating current and discovered the cosmic ray, reveals that he has evolved a startling invention that will kill at a range of 200 miles, project an impregnable wall of power at the same distance, make a country immune from enemy invasion, achieve undreamed of results in television, and transform the relations between nations. Seems like the United Nations has done a good job of that, turning all the governments into police states. We've even gone over documents where Israel was sending over their police chiefs, trainers, over here to the United States to treat our police departments, how to handle people like they handled the Palestinians, which they've been murdering at will. And they had an argument about that in the Israeli Congress, and Prime Minister Sharon of Israel said, "Don't worry about the USA, we control the USA." And Benjamin Netanyahu and Fink's Bar said they hate the USA and they're going to destroy the USA. Look that up. Don't please believe me. I'd like people to look it up and take some notes and get the facts for themselves. I just give a little direction. I haven't seen anybody comment on my section below and say, "You're lying." A lot of people say it's not true, even though there's 13 million results and plenty of documentations and book published. But they say everything to do with Israel's not true. False, 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 false. U.S. liberty, false. Creating the bank over there in the USA, the Federal Reserve in 1913 over the Christmas holiday by the Rothschilds, Rockefellers, Zionist Jewish folks, false. When everybody knows it's true. Alan Greenspan, which you can see documentation where he was speaking before Congress, said they're running a program called Creative Economic Destruction. People will say it's false, even though you can look it up. Congressman said to Alan Jackson, the congressman during those hearings said to Alan Greenspan, "Won't people get hurt?" And Alan said, "Yeah, a few people will get hurt." They don't think of us, population non-Jews, as really people. To them, we're animals and cattle, goyim, profane. Or as H.G. Wells says, animals. So he is Mr. Nikola Tesla, the famous scientist, father of radio, television, and power transmissions. His invention, he declares, is not a death ray, but a method of transmitting a heretofore unknown source of energy by transmitting particles far more powerful than rays of any kinds. So he's transmitting particles. My apparatus, he says, projects particles which may be relatively large or of the microscopic dimensions, making it possible to convey to a small area at a great distance trillions of times more energy than is possible with rays of any kinds. Transmitting particles. There's an interesting thought. I do study physics and science a lot, which has always been my aim. Getting into this conspiracy theory stuff was actually not my initial goal. Didn't have a clue. I didn't. Once I started doing some research, it just unfolded itself. The system enables many thousands of horsepower to be transmitted by a stream of thinner than a hair so that nothing can resist. So, stream thinner than a hair of particles. Wow. The same method makes it possible to achieve undreamed of results in television because there will be no limit to the intensity of illumination, size of the picture, or distance of projection. An unlimited stream of particles, not rays. I want to state implicitly that this invention of mine does not contemplate the use of any so-called death ray. The scientist explains that his apparatus will project a wall of power at about a distance of 200 miles, which would be impossible for any invading aircraft or enemies to penetrate. I do not say, adds Mr. Tesla, that there may not be several destructive wars before the world accepts my gift. But I am convinced that a century from now, every nation will render itself immune from attack by my device or by a device based on similar principles. At present, we suffer from a derangement of our civilization because we have not yet completely adjusted ourselves to the machine age. And I'm only reading my highlighted portions as usual. It was in 1896 that he discovered the cosmic rays and produced his theory of radioactivity. Now he says that war can be made impossible by a projection of a wall of power that will be impregnable to any attacking forces. He foresees the day when the electric millennium, when robots will take the place and slave labor occupied in ancient civilizations. Take the place. Got another interesting little thing on this magazine. Close Encounters. Look at this little gray alien. Remember, the people running our world, as this series is Freemasonry and Satanism, are the Zionists, the Jesuits, the Club of Malta, Knights of Columbus, Rosicrucians, Kabbalah people, Hollywood, banksters, elitists, the families of the kings and queens, the Windsors in England, who are not even English, they're Germans. If you go look it up, if what I research is true. And all over the world, all these elitists, some saying, apparently there are two types of entities we are dealing with on this planet besides we humans. One is these beings that look like that. A little spooky. And remember, we went over that one book where they had these aircraft like this flying all over Connecticut in 83 and 82, 84, size of a football field. A lot of people see glowing discs and stuff like that. I'm just saying, on this magazine, page 53, I'm not going to go into this. Disclosure of Earth and extraterrestrial contact. I like these Nexus magazines. They won't sell them here now in the United States. I have to order them once a year from Australia, because apparently they were illegal because of the mind control articles, so I was told. Probably other articles in here. Self-aware armed drones flying in the sky near you. Right where my finger is. Scientific evidence of life after death. China to disclose UFO secrets. The Vatican and the lies of Fatima. Death rays, a hidden technology. Iodine, an ancient remedy for health. and Morgellons disease cover-up. That's on the bottom here. Apparently, the sky spraying of those little fibers and chemicals they're dumping gets in some people's bodies and causes strings or little wormy things try to come out of their skin, little wiry things. Morgellons disease. Look it up. The doctors don't want to acknowledge it. So anyways, that was one magazine. So I've got a little more here on the same topic. Directed energy weapons for political control. You think I'm crazy when I talk about this stuff. Philadelphia experiment, Peter Moon's book, that of Romania, that underground facility with holographic images, thousands of years old, an ancient facility with chairs and tables that only a giant could sit at. Kosigi Mountain we went over. Project Montauk, where they were using electricity and electromagnetic energies to create portals, vortexes, like when you pull the plug on the sink or the tub, the water goes down the drain like a little vortex. They do that with electricity and magnetic fields, and apparently can create time portals. And they did that with the Philadelphia experiment. And they were using those technologies on humans, abducting young boys. Thousands, maybe hundreds of thousands of them. And mind controlling them, and brainwashing them, and sending them through time without no means of retrieving them. So I've been reading. Is all this true? Well, on another one of these Nexus magazines, issue number 21, number 6, November 2014, Directed Energy Weapons, Cognitive Warfare, and Mind Control. So before I read it, I saw this one advertisement here that was a little pretty crazy. Islamic State, the new terror brand. They're branding these Arabs as terrorists. They're branding us Christians as fundamentalists, which now the Pope says we have a mental disease if you believe in Jesus, Christianity, and decency. And you're a radical if you don't approve of the New World Order and all the other things the government's doing and the lies. If you're seeking the truth, you're a radical. But then you have Olinsky, 70, 80 years ago, writing a book, Revolution for Radicals, for the Democratic Party, Communist Party. They were training people in the United States to be radicals, to cause all the problems we have now, destruction, to get rid of freedom and capitalism, property rights, wealth ownership. Distribution of wealth is a huge lie. The poor people are not going to get anything. In the meantime, they are getting food stamps and other benefits to keep them in the corral. But once the powers that be gain control, they will be the first to be punished or eliminated because they're not productive. The fools don't see it coming. America is the Antichrist, says Putin's brain. Pentagon strategy for world domination. That's what it says here. U.S. plans first strike nuclear attack on Russia and China. The Great Conspiracy Against Russia. Agenda 21, plan for a global fascist dictatorship. I keep saying that one all the time. Trans-evolution, the age of human deconstruction. This is what this transgenderism and this gay agenda is all about. They want to de-domesticate mankind. Take everybody back to the ape age. Alright, gets worse. Debt, financial debt, Vaccines and food as a weapon in this magazine. So I'm not so sure they'll allow this magazine to be published, sold in the United States. New Dawn. Alright, let's get on to this one. Directed energy weapons for political control. While the military-industrial complex has been creating even more despicable ways to control us through the electromagnetic environment, we have brought into this nightmare with our increasing reliance on personal communications technology to the detriment of our health and freedom. So we're aiding and abetting in our own destruction, and I'm guilty like everybody else with these new technologies. iPads, laptop computers, cell phones. And of course the government has beast computers collecting data on everybody and all kinds of software programs that are being perfected. What do you want to bet they weren't testing those programs during Jade Helm 15? Debugging the software so the software can work against us. It won't be generals and captains and lieutenants and sergeants and privates that are attacking us. Computer programs and drones and maybe even frequencies on your cell phone or in your house or an energy beam weapon. All automated. Can you imagine it? All right, this covert electromagnetic area. Right now on page 27, like I said, November 2014 issue of Nexus magazine, we're engaged in a gigantic worldwide experiment in which electro pollution, biological stress, and mental health, and even judicial systems demand serious thinking. But the truth is that the dangers inherent in the non-ionizing, non-thermal electromagnetic technologies have been well known, at least to military-funded scientists, since Project Pandora in the mid-1960s. And as we've seen in the other issue of Nexus magazine that we just went over, which I think I forgot to say the issue, May 2012, volume 19, number 3. You can go on the Internet to Nexus website and order selected magazines. Or the whole thing on disc. I don't get any money from that. Just in case anybody doesn't believe me. There's no doubt we're being pulsed by our environment. And that's true, there is no doubt. We know we have antenna TV in high def now, dozens of stations by radiation. We have satellites in space beaming down satellite TV. We have the HARP transmitters located all over the world. Look them up, HARP images. And now the Gwen towers, they're strategically locating, according to my research, every 100 or 200 miles, faking, they look like fake cell phone towers. And also they're putting them in church steeples, so I've heard, read or watched a video, and other hidden places so people don't recognize them. And they're closer together, every 100, 200 miles. So the whole system, let's say the United States, is all going to be under a gigantic controlled electromagnetic field which can pinpoint directed energy at any location it wants, steering the energy to your house, your car, you standing on a city block. From my opinion and my education, my research, it's all possible. And they've been showing us the TV programs. In an era of radar operators, symptoms of sterility, baldness, cataract behind the lenses, white blood cell proliferation, chromosome changes, pointed the way, as did their children with Down's syndrome. The Cold War and EM open field research was to be protected at all cost. Biological health be damned. So the powers that be are studying these technologies. Our health be damned. They don't care about our health. So in the mid-1990s, the American National Standards adopted the safety levels of the Institute of Electrical and Electronic Engineers for a frequency of 300 kilohertz to 100 gigahertz with everything in North America. So these would be your radio station all the way up to high TV stations, microwave energy. Western Europe and Japan set for 50 to 60 hertz fields for a power of 10 to 100 milliwatts per square centimeter. Square centimeter, that big. So there's energy right here. Of course there is. If I had a radio right here, a portable radio, it would turn on. Which is a far cry from the Soviet Russia. Indeed, if the Soviets limit it to 1 microwatt, so in our United States and Europe, they got 10 to 100 milliwatts. That's huge compared to a microwatt, or 10 microwatts in the workplace, was adopted. So if in the Soviets' limit of 0.01 microwatt to 10 microwatts in the workplace were adopted in the USA, 90% of the FM stations would have to be shut down. So the Soviet Russia has much better standards, lower amounts of radiated energy that can be in your space. Alright, I'm just doing my highlighted portion, so if this seems a little convoluted, I'm jumping around. They believe the story that the effects of non-thermal electromagnetic radiation, EMR, are not dangerous. So in the United States, we all know that. They keep deeming that cell phones are not dangerous when we all know they are dangerous. Despite repeated evidence of biological effects following the non-thermal power densities of 1,000 to 10,000 microwatts. And of course, my huge concern, as we know, is these HARP systems, sky spraying of chemicals, heavy metals, including lithium, aluminum, bromium, strontium, things like that. Look it up on geoengineeringwatch.org, Dane Wigington. Get informed. It's very important. So we have 500,000 miles of high voltage power lines and their switching stations operating as gigantic antenna in the extremely low frequency ELF band of 60 hertz. So in the United States we have a gigantic antenna-like transmissions, 500,000 miles of high voltage power lines operating at 60 hertz. "60 cycles per second, pulsing all of us right now. If you could see it, there'd be waves behind me in the air. Like a ripple on the water when you throw a rock. ELF fields bombard us everywhere with the human body's resonant frequency acting as an antenna. So our own body, our own aura, gets bombarded with this radiated energy every day and pulse our bodies, interfering with our biocycle timing and thus undermining our immune systems. Do you think they know that? Do you think they control that? They must. Why would they be doing the Gwen towers and the HARP towers, and who knows what they've got with the satellite transmitters that are able to x-ray the ground, where they can determine where maybe oil wells are, gold mines, underground ancient monuments and cities and stuff. They certainly do not want we, the public, involved in the fruits of the new technologies in the future. That seems to be the issue. And at this point in reality, there's too many people on the planet for their comfort and their control. That seems to be the reality. No other reason. They're fabricating, as the report from Iron Mountain said, back in 1967-73, they had to find realistic substitutes for war. I have it in writing. I've gone over it in previous videos. You can go get report from Iron Mountain free online, and download the PDF and read it. And many other books and documents I've gone over. There's a plethora of them out there. An unlimited amount of research and material to prove what I'm saying. It's not a question. It's a fact. There's no conspiracy theory. There is a conspiracy. And it involves everybody. Africa, the Middle East, Europe, Asia, South America, North America, the world. If you're not one of them, you're an animal, so they think. Peak resident frequency lies in the middle of the very high frequency VHF band, 30 to 300 megahertz, and includes FM radio, television, land mobile stations, long-range communication with radio modems, ham radio, marine communications, and air traffic control, etc. We're all aware of that. And then, of course, the sun, including the solar magnetic storms that affect the Schumann frequency. There's a problem there. 7.8 hertz is the Schumann frequency. It is a pulse of energy that goes around the world 24/7. Every day, all night. 7.8 pulses per second. We humans, our bodies are synced up to it. Even the trees behind me, the animals, the bugs, the bees, the fish. This natural wave of energy. Look it up, Schumann frequency. Now with all these other HARP towers, Gwen towers, satellites, can they override or make the Schumann frequency pulse up to, say, instead of 7.8, maybe 8.2, 9? Can they change that natural Earth frequency that causes a detrimental situation for we humans? Or can they slow it down? You shouldn't mess with Mother Nature. So anyways, the Schumann frequency, a fact reflected in the high level of psychiatric hospital admissions during solar storms. So a solar wave coming from the sun can affect the Schumann frequency. And the hospitals have a lot of people coming in with mental issues. The government knows this. They're building all these systems every 100, 200 miles. You don't need to be Sherlock Holmes to figure this out. They know this. They're building all these closely related towers everywhere. They can override that Schumann frequency, and people will go mentally deranged, insane maybe. And then they want to microchip people, which will exacerbate the problem. Oh my God, having a microchip in you will tune right into whatever they want. Override your own aura system, your own biosystem of your body. Slow it down or speed it up. Even it says here, solar magnetic storms from the sun cause reflected in the high level of psychiatric hospital admissions during solar storms. It says it right here. You can look it up. These people who write these articles are smarter than me. And I don't take all my information from one source, as we know. I'm into hundreds of books and hundreds of magazines and thousands of press releases and thousands of books and thousands of videos. 11 years full-time research, trying to figure out what the heck is going on. It's becoming clearer. Okay, our immune systems are under assault. Page 28. Despite corporate media disinformation, those of us who have been paying attention know that extremely low frequencies have a primary impact on all life forms, and that the lower power densities can do more damage than high densities, particularly when it comes to radio frequency, RF, and microwave absorption. In his 1985 book, The Body Electric, Electromagnetism and the Foundation of Life, Robert Becker, MD, stresses that we should be most concerned about extremely low frequencies. The major problems come from extremely low frequencies, but higher frequencies have the same effect if pulsed and modulated in the ELF range. So you take 30 megahertz, for example, microwave frequency. And if they beamed it at me right now, it would be a constant 30 megahertz. That's one thing. But if they pulse it, let's say at the speed of sound, 1200 hertz, 1600 hertz, pulsed it, that 30 megahertz signal, that's much more detrimental to us. They know these technologies. So you can aim a beam of electromagnetic energy, a radio frequency from a tower, at 30 megahertz, microwave, shh, or you can pulse it, like a pulse cannon. And apparently that's much more detrimental. You're being pulsed almost at a sound wave with a microwave. You get it? My best explanation there. So not only can they transmit 30 megahertz, they can pulse it at 16 hertz, 1600 hertz, 2000 hertz. That's the sound wave frequency when you're speaking. The low sounds or high sounds, sound waves, what you hear. So they pulse these invisible frequencies at sound wave frequencies, and they're much more detrimental to the human body. Hope my explanation helped. They have these technologies. We're reading about it. They're building these Gwen towers. They build those HARP transmitters. They got the Georgia USA Guidestones. They want to reduce the population. We know that the occult people into the mystery schools of Babylon are in charge of the world. The Freemasons, the Illuminati, the Jesuits, the Zionists, Clubs of Malta, Knights of Malta, Knights of Columbus, witchcraft, Hollywood, Kabbalah people, and many more names. Order of the Knights of the East. What? They're just brotherhoods everywhere. Banksters, elitists. And apparently there are some entities on this planet in cahoots with them for this new age. And apparently the two that seem to be very commonplace are reptilian, some called shapeshifter people, that are blue bloods and have no capacity for compassion or mercy. They're cold-blooded and they're monstrous. And apparently the Greys, so some of the material I've read can go either way, those gray aliens, some of them appear to be benevolent and desire to not harm humanity. And some of them appear to be very vicious, like Hiawas, Aleister Crowley's being he was incommunicado with, that he drew a drawing of, a rendition, which looks like a gray alien. And Hiawas, he said, I am the god of war and vengeance. We've gone over this. We're going to go over it some more. I thought it might behoove us to get into some of this weaponry that's out there that might pose a danger to we the people. Whether you're in Egypt, Bosnia, London, New York, North Carolina, Canada, Argentina, Australia, anywhere in the world. China, Japan. And another thing on the Coast to Coast last night, listening to those people talk about the moon landing, somebody interrupted and said, we've got a catastrophe on our hands. The Pacific, Fukushima, is just spewing radiation. And the whole world seems to be ignoring it. Moving on, many experiments have confirmed stress reactions to ELF waves, extremely low frequency. So you take a high frequency and you pulse it at a low frequency. Stress reactions to people ELF magnetic and electrical fields, and microwave exposures, stress being the precursor of a disease to a disease condition that calls upon the immune system to work its healing magic. So your immune system, under these conditions, is battling with your body to heal your body when you get barraged with this weaponry, these frequencies, which I feel that they do this periodically, especially when they're sky spraying, because I notice sometimes for no reason I really start to feel fatigued and ill, and then it takes me a few days to recover. I go, what the heck happened? Just makes me wonder. However, if stress never lets up, the immune system is under attack 24/7, Dr. Becker noted. Moving on. If the stressful condition persists, hormone and immune levels decline further, well below normal. In medical terms, stress decompensation has set in, and the animal is now more susceptible to the stresses, including malignant growth and infectious diseases. In 10 to 30 years, stress reactions of human beings living under high voltage wires and over underground power lines have casually led to cancer and other internal diseases, including deep depression and suicide. The adrenal cortex become exhausted and the dorsal system erratic. Blood pressure and brainwave patterns change. Blood triglyceride levels go up, harbingers of stroke, heart attack, and arteriosclerosis. Stress response, desynchronized bicycles, interference with cellular metabolism and growth process. The list goes on, culminating in genetic alteration of future generations. Oh my. Enter the military battle space now everywhere. Besides the crossfire of radiation from FM radio and television stations and cell phones bouncing from tower to tower, there are military applications as well. Consumers have convenience and careers on their minds, while the military industrial complex is invested in weapons and control. What it calls C4, Command and Control Communications and Computers. If you haven't noticed this military presence, Dr. Becker explains. Why? Because industry and the military demand unrestricted use of the electromagnetic fields and radiation. Their intrinsic hazards are often compounded by secrecy and deceit. In my years of piecing together the national security non-sequentors surrounding EM technologies, a hallucinogen, whatever that means, and disinformation landmines, I have found secrecy and deceit to be the truth in spades. Let's not forget who controls our world. It is these students of the secret mystery schools, the Freemasons, Illuminati, and other occultic groups. Yes? No. I feel it is yes. They control it. Federal Reserve, banksters. They do not have our best interest at heart. Most people know the politicians work for the elites, not for us anymore. This is common knowledge these days. They have these technologies. They just passed legislation or some big meeting today over there in France, making some deal without our knowledge on the global warming, which doesn't exist. And they have all these weapons. And they want to depopulate the planet. We have plenty of documentation over that. We've gone over that. They're causing revolutions in countries all over the Middle East. Egypt, Libya, Syria they're trying to destroy. And Ukraine, and many other places. And it's none the better for the people. It just gets worse and worse. And the government knows the worse it gets, the more extreme positions people will take to protect themselves against the government, and the chaos and anarchy will increase. And these are the weapons they have. The events of 11 September 2001, 9/11, marked a dramatic turning point in many ways, one being the increased use of electromagnetic weapons for public shock and awe. That's what these terrorist and shooting attacks are. They're little shock and awe situations to sway public opinion and control the public and increase police powers and police legislation, and so the public will go along. They know this stuff. They're into mind control. From electronic surveillance technology like radiating devices, receivers, non-radiating devices, and laser-facilitated listening devices, both ground and satellite, to hot-on-the-hook phones, smartphones, and Exudio Studio software to detect and decode emotions. So they got software to detect and decode emotions. Remotely controlled open source data surveillance technology like microcomputers, pattern recognition, voice, and thought activation, including brainwave monitoring of thoughts, is now big business, and thus the term military-industrial complex. Just a thought. I do have an electronic engineering technology background. I would probably be prospering a lot better now if I went to go get a job at one of these companies, rather than researching material and maybe putting myself in a dangerous position. Just a thought. We all have a choice to make. To go with the God and Jesus and Ten Commandments and the right thing to do, or turn to the dark side. I think I'll trust in God. Anyways, in this unseen electromagnetic era, the line between military and civilian is rapidly disappearing as the military redefines all the life on the planet as a battle space. I've been saying this. Anti-personnel weapons, known as non-lethal weapons, include sonic phaser, photon application by stimulated emission of radiation, cyclotronic scalar wave, infrared weapons, any of which might be wheeled into any neighborhood or peaceful political demonstration of any nation that has signed status of focused agreements. Take, for example, the high-power microwave HPM projectile, known as the Active Denial System, ADS, that pulses electromagnetic radiation at 95 gigahertz, boils molecules in and under the skin, melts body organs, or long-range acoustic device, LRAD, an absolutely silent sonic weapon, directed sound communication that launches a thermal elastic wave of acoustic pressure at high frequency, 2.5 kilohertz, and a 30-degree beam which silently screams into the inner ear by bone conduction. A turn of the LRAD dial can cook eyeballs and organs, and permanently auditory damage occurs in 15 meters. This non-lethal device is usually mounted on a Hummer and is primarily used for crowd control. So much for the First Amendment freedom of assembly. Go look up crowd control microwave vehicle. You'll see they have these vehicles with these dishes on top. An anti-material electromagnetic pulse, EMP, is the burst of EM radiation resulting from a nuclear detonation and or a suddenly fluctuating magnetic field. Rapidly changing electric and magnetic fields, then coupled with the electronic systems, produce damaging current and voltage surges. A detonation a few thousand miles above the Earth can destroy, not just paralyze, electronic across the continent. There's more here. I'm not reading. You can see where I left off. I didn't read this here for this video. Maybe I'll read it for the next video. There's another page here. Another page here. Another page. Another page. So there's a lot here I didn't read on this issue. another page, and lastly, another page. And apparently it continues on page 83. 82. So I just read a portion of that information. Oh my! And another thing, when Obama was speaking in a video today that I was looking with Lisa Haven, I noticed two things. On the U.S. flag, or an American flag, it had a gold fringe around it, this gold lace. That means martial law. Go look it up. And on the other flag that stood behind him, the stars didn't have the pointy thing of a star. Two legs on the bottom, the two on the side, and the one on the top. A regular star. It was upside down with the two pointy things like this. The symbol of the devil was on the flag. All the stars were upside down. And apparently the Republican Party, on their logo, where they had all the normal stars with the point up, has switched it upside down with the 2 points up. Again, Satanism, Luciferianism. Just observations you should pay attention to. And if you don't believe me, go look up witchcraft and images and take a look for yourself about the stars. And then notice they use a lot of stars with a ring around it. And then go to the TV show Chuck Norris, Texas Rangers, and they use that star in the background all the time. A little concerning. All right, moving on. Another Nexus magazine article. July 2014. Mind control techniques in the 21st century. I know when I'm watching the news or reading press releases and stuff like that, they put a lot of truth into something, obvious truths, and then they inject a lie. So here you are, mesmerized by the news or reading something, and you're reading it true, 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 and you're saying to yourself, yeah, that's so true. And then they have another sentence or another word. And people are not paying attention to that. Never mind the mesmerization and hypnotization that goes on by these people, highly developed in psychology and the workings of the human mind. So I thought I'd read this, knowing that they have all these weapons and electronic systems, and they've been studying with black op programs, horrendous things they've done to people, abducting them and torturing them and experimenting on them, almost beyond belief. Even Phil Schneider, who apparently, unless he's lying, went into the underground facilities at Dulce Basin, New Mexico. Only a few of the Americans that went down there fighting the so-called aliens came out alive. But they found in there cages with humans in them. Miles Johnston, his series, the Basis series, a lot of eyewitness testimony. David Icke and all his books, and Arizona Wilder Conversation, look it up, and so much more. So I think it might behoove us to be aware of mind control. So only reading my highlighted portions. Understanding the neural code. And as neuroscientist Michael Persinger has said, the great mythology of the brain is that it is beyond our understanding. And the fact is, it's not beyond our understanding. In fact, according to inventor and futurist Ray Kurzweil, very detailed mathematical models of several dozen regions of the human brain and how they work had already been developed over a decade ago. And now they're using computer software programs to monitor and predict human behavior. Jade Helm 15 comes to mind. Kurzweil also said, at that time, the science is further along in understanding the principles of operation of the human brain than most people realize. While the brain may be complicated, it's not that complicated. Similarly, the U.S. Air Force report from 1995 in a section entitled Biological Process Control predicts that before 2050, we will have achieved a clear understanding of how the human brain works, how it really controls the various functions of the body, and how it can be manipulated. One can envision the development of electromagnetic energy sources. Here we go again. Gwen towers, ground wave, HARP systems, cell phones, laptops, computers, local radio transmitters that can couple with human body in a fashion that will allow one to prevent voluntary muscular movements, control emotions, and thus actions, produce sleep, transmit suggestions, interfere with memory, produce an experience set, or delete an experience set. So these people involved in some of these so-called terrorist shootings, could they be black op operations by these people vying for world domination, the New World Order, the New Age, which nobody can deny if they want to be honest with themselves? They just look up those words, read some books, pay attention to what's going on. There's no logical reason for overthrowing all those countries in the Middle East and then the Ukraine. Creating the EU through economic means. They couldn't pay their bills. They had to borrow money from the International Money Fund, controlled by the banksters, Rothschild, Zionist, Jewish folks, including probably the Jesuits, the church, and other witchcraft associations, Freemasons, Illuminati, etc., 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 Council of Foreign Relations, Club of Rome, Hollywood. Vast networks, mystery school of Babylon, witchcraft. Babylon means the gateway to the gods. And where are the ancient monuments? Over there in Baghdad, Syria, all over the Middle East, Jerusalem. And they're taking over all those lands. When they invaded Iraq, the first thing they did is made a beeline for the museums to get the artifacts. And at the end of World War II, they made a beeline for all of Hitler's scientific projects, rocket ships and everything else, the documents and the educated peoples under Project Paperclip, and brought them into the United States and continued the Nazi operations here. As disturbing as such predictions may be, it is possible that technologies to prevent, or perhaps even impel, muscular movement, control emotions, transmit suggestions, delete memories, create false memories, and so on have already been developed. They don't want people to know this stuff. Past developments, certainly even a cursory review of the open literature reveals that various sophisticated mind control technologies already exist. For example, there is the 1974 invention of Robert Mielek, for which a patent was granted in 1976 and was assigned to the defense contractor Dorn and Morgellon Inc. for a method of remotely monitoring and altering brainwaves. I suggest this author is smarter than I am. That's why I read all these magazines and all these books. Moreover, experiments conducted over 30 years ago at the Stanford Research Institute show that basic mind reading from EEG, electron encephalography, readouts was possible, revealing the existence of non-symbolic language, of brainwave patterns which could be deciphered and translated. Indeed, by the late 1960s, remote control of the human brain, accomplished without the implementation of electrodes, was well on its way to being realized. a means of stimulating a brain by creating an electrical field completely outside the head, a magnetic field, was developed, and it was discovered that electric pulses could stimulate the brain using far less energy than previously thought, effectual in the old implanting technique. Not surprising, with such developments arose legitimate fears of the future world where human robots would perform the bidding of the military. Oh my. So when they come to our doors, if we've been targeted, and you try to explain to them that, hey, I'm a patriotic American, Constitution should be the law of the land, Bill of Rights. You're talking to the wall. These people are brainwashed, mind controlled, robots. They won't be at your door to say hello. Likely they'll be at your door to neutralize anyone. And neutralize means kill, assassin. One source quotes a 1970 Pentagon agency report as saying that it will likely be possible in several years to induce sounds and words directly into the brain, bypassing the ears, as well as the use of combinations of frequencies and other signal characteristics to produce other neurological effect. The report notes that the Soviets had observed various changes in the body chemistry and the functioning of the brain from the exposure of the brain to various frequencies. So it would be concerning why they're building these fake cell phone towers and even installing them in church steeples and other places to hide them. Gwen systems, look it up, ground wave, every 100 to 200 miles apart. Some vast electronic computerized system, plus the HARP systems, plus the satellites in space, plus the cell phones. A combination of all this, iPads, laptop computers, wireless. We're in trouble if all this is true. One would think that the secret services out there in the world would try to stop this. As mentioned also are studies at the Massachusetts Institute of Technology showing that magnetic brainwaves can be picked up and amplified as if the brain were a radio transmitter with no implants or electrodes required. Finally, an article from 1981 describes how microwave generators placed in appropriate locations and transmitting at low energy would create interference patterns out of the interaction with brain waves, brain electricity. These interference patterns could then be built up by computers into a three-dimensional, moving picture of mental processes. In other words, a remote thought scanner, a tracking device, could be developed. Recent advances. In light of these past developments, it is perhaps rather surprising to read modern articles, innovations in mind reading and mind control technologies, in which it is sometimes claimed, for example, that scanners, electrodes, and proximity to the subject are required to read and control minds. This is the July 2014 issue of Nexus magazine. So it might behoove us to pay attention to this stuff. You wonder why, 85-90% of the people out there are standing in line at tattoo parlors to get tattooed, as if it's a priority. What's going on? Here in North Carolina, the city I live, we got numerous tattoo parlors. And yeah, people are standing in line, waiting and sitting in seats and all that. When the economy is pretty bad, they probably need money, but it seems to be some kind of priority. Those people who are still unaffected to these mind control techniques rampant all over the world that are awake might possibly be a threat to the powers that be that want to take over the world for the New World Order and New Age with the Agenda 21 programs, biodiversity, sustainability, the recent global warming summit they just had, and they apparently coming out there patting themselves on the back, that they've all come to an agreement on what they're going to do. And it's all fake. It's just a police power, forced control. Hey, we're running out of water. The air's polluted. We're running out of food. The crops are failing. In the meantime, there's sky spraying us like we're bugs. HARP systems, microwave transmitters, ground wave, Gwen towers, secret cell phone towers, disguised as cell phone towers, and so much more. The TV programming. If people would just be objective about it and look at it, it's obvious. But that's too much for some people to grasp. Normalcy bias is the psychological term for it. They don't want to see into the dark room. They want to live in ignorance and bliss. But when the end comes, when the event happens, like San Bernardino or the French bombing shootings and maybe some nuclear explosion in some city, and then martial law is declared, everybody will wake up. But then it'll be too late. It will be the people versus the governments. And not all people in the government are bad. I am a person that loves the United States. I'm very patriotic. I do not believe in terrorist situations. I don't think normal people would do any of those terrorist situations. I think it's all strange, created events. Apparently, I watched a couple videos, and several eyewitnesses to San Bernardino said 3 tall white men with ski masks on came in and was shooting up the people, not that couple. Of course, it would not be all that surprising if mind control technology had advanced considerably, but that research has been carried out in secret for reasons of national security. Everything to do with what they're doing is national security. CIA-affiliated scientists have certainly conducted much research which they have been prohibited from sharing with their peers. And inventions that implicate national security are routinely suppressed under Pentagon secrecy orders. Recent advances which have been made public are quite troubling. Some examples. After scientists placed the neurons on a dish, the neurons quickly began to reconnect themselves, forming a living neuron network, a brain. So they took some brain neurons and put them on a dish, a slide under a microscope, and they started reconnecting to create some kind of brain thinking process. Number 2, in August 2013, researchers revealed that miniature human brains had been grown in the laboratory. Oh my. One researcher did comment that growing larger laboratory brains would be undesirable. You think? Number 3, on 1 July 2013, this is current information, a magazine reported a claim by a neuroscientist, Sergio Canavero, that it is now feasible to transplant the head of one human to the body of another and reattach the spinal cord. Makes one wonder. Scientists have reconstructed from MRI functional magnetic resonance imaging, brain scans, random images viewed by subjects, in research that hints that one day scientists might be able to access dreams, memories, and imagery. Number 5, the brain of 2 rats have been linked, such that one located in North Carolina responded telepathically to the thoughts of the other located in Brazil. The second rat's brain processed signals from the first rat brain, delivering over the internet as if they were its own. Scientists speculated about the future possibility of biological computer in which numerous brains are connected. Wow. Number 6, a brain-to-brain interface has been created allowing humans to move a rat's tail by just thinking about it. Researchers are told that while it is not yet possible to communicate brain to brain with our fellow humans, we may be on our way to controlling other species. Number 7. Continuing the ultrasound theme, focused pulses of low intensity, low frequency ultrasound transmitted non-invasively through the skull of the human brain have been shown capable of producing not only pain but also sound, as well as invoking sensory stimuli. Producing hallucinations through the remote and direct stimulation of brain circuits. Possibilities are the ability to remotely control brain activity and the creation of artificial memories. Again, if they can do this, a lot of these things going on in the world right now are very suspect. Yes? No? Alright, transmitting sensory data directly into the human brain. Most troubling, one source recently alleged that the National Security Agency is using this ultrasound technology to target individuals through their smartphones. See, all this stuff I say, when we keep on researching, it's verifiable through other people. And I don't believe one source. I'm not a fool. I don't believe everything I read. But after book after book after book, for example, there was a press release in the news that said that those 2 people accused, Arabs I guess, of the San Bernardino shooting were radicalized before they met. So is anybody who is awake or fearing for their country or their people, like in Iraq when they were bombing? Some guy wanted to get milk and food for his children and his wife, who would be declared an insurgent and shot with a machine gun or a bomb. Are these people called radicals? So what I was thinking, and I have a huge collection of books, Saul Alinsky is one of these communist socialist types, trying to radicalize all the people in the United States with the gay agenda and distribution of wealth and justice, which is all a lie. But I have the book. So they're accusing those 2 people, accused of the shooting in San Bernardino, of being radicalized. And here we got these people in the United States, the communist socialist types, writing a book about how to radicalize. So I guess it's bad for those Arabs to be radicalized, but it's good for the people that are Democrats or socialists, and I'm sure Republicans are in on this New World Order, and communist types trying to do social justice, which is all a lie. It's okay for these people to do radicalized situations. A pragmatic primer for realistic radicals. Just to show you that all this stuff is intentional. This was published in 1972, when they were publishing all those other crazy books like Report from Iron Mountain, which said that they had to come up with a realistic alternative to war to control the peoples. I'm paraphrasing. And they had the overpopulation books, and they had the Vietnam War, and they were bringing all the drugs to the American people. It was an intentional attempt, and apparently succeeding, to destroy American values and Christianity. So let me read a little bit from the back of this book. Funny philosophical brief, a primer for hellraisers. So these people who are destroying America, creating the homosexual decadent agenda, Ashley Madison, cheat on your spouse, confidentiality guaranteed, spending trillions of our money from the Federal Reserve, giving it to all these banksters when they crashed the system in 2008, 9/11 when the insiders did the towers, and then Building 7 with demolitions, overthrowing all the countries in the Middle East, Ukraine, posturing themselves with the Patriot Act and all kinds of other legislation to take away all of our property rights and our ability to have freedom of movement on our own property and do things under the excuse of global warming, environmental pollution, unsustainability. Read more at the back of this. This country's leading hellraiser, Saul Alinsky, I think one of Hillary's friends, I don't think he's still alive, has set down some of the rules of the game. No one has had more experience or has had more successful at it than Alinsky. Very much an American grain, this may well become a sort of classic text for organizers bent on greater social and political justice. It's a lie. The Democratic Party, the Republican Party, from my research, are controlled by the same bankster money people. Any questions? Do some serious looking into it and you will decide that it's all a farce. It doesn't matter who wins, the Republican candidate, the Democratic candidate, the people in control are the puppet masters. The Illuminati bankster, the Zionist Jesuit, Club of Rome, Bilderberger, Bohemian Grove, Council of Foreign Relations, Heritage Foundation, Ford Foundation, all these things have been taken over. Israel controls the USA, as Prime Minister Sharon said. And let's not forget, Benjamin Netanyahu says they're going to sell off America piece by piece. Why? Because they hate us. They're going to make us regret not wanting to be their slaves. He said that in Fink's Bar. Please go look it up. For students radical of the country, the book is a must. Boston Globe. Alinsky has written a primer for radicals that will be studied wherever a Samuel Adams comes along again. It is a book of all times. Chicago Daily News. So what I'm saying is they can write books and they can teach themselves to be radical. Then they say those Arabs who were supposed to be accused of the San Bernardino shooting were radicalized. So I guess it's okay for these people creating the New World Order to be radicalized, but anybody who wants to fight it can't be radicalized. Strange? So where were we here on this thing? Number 8. A researcher was able to make a fellow researcher in a different office move his finger just by thinking about it in the first demonstration of human brain-to-brain interface. And the remote viewers that I went over, those books, Tim Rifat, David Morehouse, government remote viewers, were able to actually possess people's bodies and control and see what they were seeing and maybe even pull out a gun and shoot somebody. A low-cost means of tracking people, even though walls had been developed. A low-cost means of tracking people, even through walls, has been developed. While in the past individuals could be tracked anywhere by the military using radar technologies, this technology might enable entities with fewer resources to track people as well. Alright, I want to try to wrap up this video so it's not too long. And I will continue reading about the mind control from that Nexus magazine article and another of these series of the Peter Moon videos I'm making on the several books. But continuing on here, let me just try to skip through some more data that's just trying to give the information a little bit more credibility. So we left off on chapter 3, the truth. All right, moving on, the documents. We're trying to get some credibility and truth. Philadelphia experiment. Who were these people? Oskar Schneider, Phil Schneider. Apparently Oskar Schneider was a German U-boat officer, captured by the French, turned over to the United States, and recruited for the United States military, became a doctor, and then was involved in the Philadelphia experiment, where apparently they had microwave transmitters around the ship here, the USS Eldridge. It disappeared from reality, and apparently appeared several places in the world as it was moving in time. And then it reappeared, and some of the soldiers, military people, were half in the bulkhead, half out of the bulkhead. A horrific affair. The ones who weren't destroyed that way were seriously mentally deranged and altered and had to be confined and probably brainwashed mental institutions because of the event. True or false? That's the question. All this stuff. But anyways, apparently Alexandra Bruce, the researcher, has some more evidence we ought to look at. She says, I have in my possession a copy of Phil Schneider's filing for Social Security disability payments, including in the list of his employers from 1974 to 1981 are Morrison Knudsen Inc. as a U.S. Department of Defense construction contractor and the Office of Navy Intelligence Overseas Projects Division. I also have a copy of a photograph of an approximately 8-year-old Phil and his 2 siblings on the White House lawn for an Easter egg hunt. This does indeed suggest his father was a VIP in government circles. Apparently all these people in powerful places know things and are doing things that they're trying to keep from the rest of us. That's why all this spying and monitoring of everybody, and people who seem to learn too much get assassinated. Something is going on. Maybe we can all agree on that. Aside from the above, the most persuasive hard evidence available to back his stories is a stack of his father's Navy documents and photographs which Phil found in his father's basement after the latter's death. So I showed you those letters earlier that he had written in longhand in this video. Oscar, the one who was involved with the Philadelphia experiment after the fact, I think, and who had to, I guess, monitor and try to help the people who were victims of the event. So he wrote some stuff in freehand, and it's translated here into type, so we can further look at the evidence of those letters. I'll try to be brief about this and end this video. But it says here, and then there was that Allende character, Carlos Allende, witnessed the Philadelphia experiment. Allende was the person credited with breaking the Philadelphia experiment story. And I went over Carlos Allende, the book on UFOs, with Jessup, Morris K. Jessup, in the last video. Jessup was later found suicided in his car. A lot of people get suicided while researching the Philadelphia experiment, and apparently Phil Schneider was suicided. His death is actually the first Philadelphia experiment murder, spurred researchers to dig further into the mysterious enigma that still begs for more official answers. All right, some of those handwritten letters here are translated. You can pause it, read it. In consideration of the latest facts, in considering the faith of the USS Faronseth, DE-173, I don't know why they don't call it the Eldridge, all ships' personnel and material must be quarantined, absolute until further notice, no exceptions. So they didn't want any of those soldiers telling other people, witnessing. They were quarantined, they were put in mental institutions. Consider these and all events of nature above secret. C-Class ARH-9 Project Blue Sky. 1944, a year after the Philadelphia experiment. Another letter. I'll pause all these so you can read it yourself. It suggests that the ramifications of the apparent ship slipshod follow-up of the Philadelphia experiment are still being felt in Oscar's department. This resulted in FBI Chief J. Edgar Hoover ordering all associated personnel. Didn't Hoover become a president? So these people know what's going on, but they're not sharing it with the rest of us. This resulted in Hoover ordering all associated personnel to have prior and restricted psychological testing at the Naval Facility in Quantico, Virginia. This reads like an order to debrief or brainwash all of the surviving participants. In addition, a special unit of Army intelligence was being sent to supervise this injunction. Ironically, the date of the psychological testing coincides with the advent of MK Ultra. So here's the letter translated. General Nathan Twining. I think he was involved in the Roswell incident also. 1953, 10 years after the Philadelphia experiment. In proper perspective, the Philadelphia, Navy Yard's bungling of what should have been a routine exhaustive search of the USN vessel, D-173, shows a lack of substance and detail in your department. As of 0600, or 0621, April 1953, Edgar Hoover now requests that all associated personnel be given prior and restricted psychological testing conducted by the Navy Psychological Unit in Quantico, Virginia. Be it also forthwith that the U.S. Army Intelligence 19 Group be sent to assist any further snafus by USN and related personnel. Oscar Schneider, Captain. Just some documents. Okay, over here, page 60. Document number 3. This is dated 6 days after the previous letter. Refers to the escape of 7 of the crew members from the psychological testing facility. So some of these people who were in the psychological testing facility escaped. I wonder why. They had witnessed the Philadelphia experiment and probably been on the ship, or a nearby ship witnessing the event, popping out of existing and back into existence. They could not have any witnesses. In Quantico, Oscar assures the addressee, Ed Condon, there's an interesting person's name, of their capture, as the whole affair was recently classified as 1A Prime Directive. The letter also refers to Tesla's spatial analyzer, Nikola Tesla, and his advanced technologies, which he claimed he could crack the Earth in half, and suggests that his department is continuing a plan Philly-type experiments. So they're going to do more of these experiments to make things pop in and out of existence. Ed Condon mentioned here is involved, and I have a book by Ed Condon we ought to look at. So the government does hire debunkers. Make no mistake about that. One of them in the UFO world is this guy, Dr. Edward Condon, Scientific Study of Unidentified Flying Objects. He attempts to totally debunk everything. Look at the size of this book. Almost 3 fingers. How many pages? 958 pages? So he tries to debunk everything. I offer these digressions with the suggestion that a great deal of work still remains to be done on the visualizing characteristics of the so-called normal and reliable people who have made sightings of all kinds. It has been generally assumed that if a man is a respected member of a respected profession, like a commercial jet pilot, he is free from any visualizing aberrations, and that he always sees the world and its phenomenon as nakedly, as honestly, as my young lieutenant saw it when he declined to play the ink blot game. It is hardly surprising that strange objects and phenomena of all kinds have been chronicled and reported for about 3,500 years. For thousands of years previously, as oral tradition of systems of religion, mythology, and folklore, the number of reports of strange phenomena have increased steadily with time, an increase caused by a great proliferation of journals and newspapers since their start in the 17th century. As the news media increased in numbers, they gathered and printed more in reports of strange happenings that would otherwise have remained localized and forgotten. So anyways, I was looked at this book, perusing a little bit, and he just tries to So I'll just be brief on my little description of some of the stuff in this book. But here are some pictures. And here's some of the things he says. Optical fabrication. Full moon in the midst of a sunset scene. A physical impossibility. Image of moon behind the observer was reflected on a sheet of glass through which the photo was taken. Photograph taken from an orbiting spacecraft showing an luminous airglow layer above the Earth illuminated by the moonlight. As an opaque angle of the Earth's surface, the zodiac light band, apparently at the conical band, the bright object near the apex of the zodiacal band is the planet Venus. So somebody paid this guy to debunk everything, supposedly very scientifically. The Condon Report. Have temperatures and charts. So it's 1966, the Air Force commissioned, the Air Force commissioned this, the University of Colorado to make a scientific study of UFOs. Since then, a group of the nation's leading scientists have conducted the most intensive investigation of this heatedly debated phenomenon in Earth. So they went through a lot of trouble to debunk the whole UFO thing. And there was a big stir in the UFO communities back then. So anyways, he's mentioned also in this Philadelphia experiment. So Mr. Condon writes, the Joint Task Force 1, 1953. Ed, please excuse our concern at USN headquarters over the flap concerning the DE-173. As you might know, this affair has been on our collective minds for some near 10 years. Why was it on their minds for 10 years if the Philadelphia experiment wasn't real? The wind is blowing. As a subsequent escape of 7 of its original crew from the Psycho unit in Virginia, so some of the crew had to actually escape from the Psycho ward. Be rest assured that their immediate capture, as Hoover now considers such matters as sectional classification 1A prime directive. As far as seeing your work at Colorado U, that would be that book. In Boulder, we plan to attend your lecture and study. Thank you for your concern of Nikolai Tesla's spatial analyzer type device, as now we have the Gizmo too. So they have Nikolai Tesla's spatial analyzer. Please send on Reno's work to initiate new Philly naval workings of immediate future. So they're going to continue the investigation into those technologies which made the Philadelphia experiment ship disappear. So these are translations from those handwritten records that Phil had of his father's records concerning this event. Page 62, a document dated March 1955, and nearly 2 years after the previous 2 letters. This letter is addressed to another military surgeon. It refers to an autopsy of number 9 crew member, during which a 1 1/8 gold tip implant with unknown script of writing, as it was removed from his brain. So when the guy died, they did an autopsy. And he had a 1 inch long and 1/8 gold-tipped implant with unknown script of writing that was installed in his brain. Remember, there's supposed to be aliens involved in this stuff. Oscar is asking if this doctor can identify the writing using his analytical methods. So here's the letter. Fonsborough, MD. Charles conducted autopsy on number 9 crew member of DE-173 with some abnormal conclusions as to foreign material, perhaps implants, found in number 9 cerebrium, part 14-3. The subsequent analysis of the 1 1/8 long gold-tipped fiber shaped something like this, and he had a drawing. Can you identify using your analytical methods 4 of these mysterious devices were removed from number 9? So they have 4 of those devices implanted in him. One of the members on the Philadelphia experiment, DE-173 crew member, as nasal cavity also showed implantation, and this was Oscar Schneider. Just more documents to show that this event may have really happened. And so the handwriting analysis was done on Oscar Schneider's letters by professionals, from Alexandra Bruce, the author. Investigative journalists writing this book. I only got one little highlighted sentence here. Go buy the book. Let's give credit where credit is due, but don't believe everything you read, of course. This is just the tip of the iceberg. The writer knows more than he is telling. This is a handwriting expert. He is not making this up. He is good at keeping quiet. And chapter 6, which I'll save for later, is the Nazi connection. So what is true with this Philadelphia experiment? Montauk program of time tunnels, pushing children through, abducting thousands of young boys, horrific experiments performed on them of mind control, and even using sexual magic. Apparently it does something to the psyche. Is all this true? And everything we've been talking about in this video seems very bizarre, but is it true? And the pursuit, as the Pope has said recently, Obama, Clinton, Bush, Kissinger, everybody, that can be easily observed now. They have said we're pushing for a new world order. They've got this biodiversity document I ordered, big book about this thick. Sustainable development, I've been showing the documents in these videos. Agenda 21 documents have been showing in these videos. We're all aware of the terror attack and shootings going on, the economic crisis that's probably being planned for us, the looming World War III, microchipping children and people all over the world now, murdering Arabs and making them flee the Middle East, digging for artifacts all over the world. Much more. Biologicals, plagues, declaring there's going to be a pole shift. Now they're saying it's 2030. They keep saying it every year. An incoming Planet X or something. Satanism and Luciferian symbols and stuff on TV, movies. Just crazy stuff on and on and on. So I'm making these videos so maybe that we can make some sense of it. Rick Miracle reporting.